Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, as we welcome you in here to the historic Content Fantasy Podcast with your host, Michael Della Rocca and James Ashby.
It's the Content Fantasy Podcast presented by FYT Productions. I'm Michael Della Rocca. That's James Ashby. What a couple days of the NFL season it's been. James, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, and yes, it's been very exciting. These seasons always seem to sneak up on us, but especially this year, and we get two back to back, with a very unfortunate ending to this past game that tonight. But uh, happy for the season to be underway here.
I mean, it looks very unfortunate right out the gate. We are recording right out of the Packers versus Eagles in São Paulo, Brazil. Jordan Love looks like he might have an issue with his knee, perhaps his calf. James was watching a bunch of tape before and said that he saw a pop. Did you confirm that you saw a pop, James?
Yeah, I saw pop. The pop was there for sure, and you're sitting there from sort of far away in real time. You're thinking maybe we got a little sprain here, maybe high ankle sprain, MCL sprain, something of that nature. I was sort of reminded of last year, Trevor Lawrence
Well,
going
up
down. You
until
see
the
that
end of the
ankle
game.
get rolled up on like crazy, and he's smacking the ground, and of course I'm fucking off and think this what.
I don't know what just happened. I heard a crazy noise, and I was like, "What's going on here? Commotion going on in the back, I guess. I don't know."
Are
Keep
we still
talking.
going?
Keep talking.
So you see Trevor go down and he's smacking the ground, and all you're thinking is, that's it. This guy's cooked for the year. He goes back in, comes right back out at half, and puts it on the table, if you will. And so you're hoping and you're praying for that, but then you get the close up, and you see that pop, and you see the Twitter doctors come out.
Those damn Twitter doctors, and
Yeah, the Twitter doctors, they will get to you. But this looks, I don't know. This looks clear cut to me. I'm no doctor.
But before we get into the Eagles Packer game and the Jordan Love injury, let's get started here and talk about the start of the season, which was yesterday. The Taylor Swift team versus the non-Taylor Swift team, as the internet and everyone else will tell you. What did you think of the Chiefs Ravens game yesterday? Any fantasy relevance to you? Anything you saw other than Lamar Jackson just totally missing wide open men?
Yeah, I mean that's always going to be tough with the running back under center. But what really stood out to me yesterday was the old men and the age that is showing.
You're talking about
And
guys like Derrick Henry or what the
guy
old
like
men.
Derrick Henry, I'm looking at both tight ends. I know one's still in his 20s, but even the mighty Travis Kelsey, who came out before this game and said he's gonna play 2 games here. He gets out targeted, out receptioned by his backup Noah Gray, and
True.
he looked tired out there.
There
Is
w-
it
there was some plays where he would run and you could see him heavy breathing. You don't know how his off season was. Doing his lifestyle and everything like that. This is a big year for him. And luckily they had Xavier Worthy, who had a monstrous debut, showing off that speed, getting the ball in his hands, and that kind of carried them for a little bit. And obviously Lamar on the one side missed a couple red zone guys, but Isaiah Likely was a star. Clearly, it looks like maybe Isaiah's the new tight end one over Mark Andrews there in Baltimore.
Could be. Could be.
I,
And
I,
and before we leave the Chiefs, I mean, it's worth noting that you have all these playoff runs over and over and over again. This is extra seasons for these guys, especially a guy like Travis Kelsey.
But I mean, if you're talking about a guy like, Pacheco looked good. I think Rashee
That
Rice
was
might
very
take a
good.
step back with Xavier Worthy step up. I still think he's going to be a comparable number two. Noah Gray, I think, is an interesting guy. If he's on the waiver wire somewhere, he could definitely be. I think Travis is going to be a big moment guy. I think you're going to see maybe a step back. You saw the last year, the step back. He didn't have 1,000 yards. Yes, he had 93% receptions, but he didn't have that 1,000-yard season for the first time,
But he's
like
still
in
coming out
years.
there and getting 10, 11 targets. He's still a focal point.
Yeah, but he's also, like I said, running these routes. It's also week 1 of September. You saw it towards the end of last season too. Him kind of slow down in the playoffs, only kind of making like big time plays when needed most. And I think that's why they added that speed. They have so many other weapons they can go to also on that offense. As well as really run. Pacheco was running really aggressively and strong. You see that Xavier Worthy guy gets a lot that number 1 jersey making some moves. They even targeted Juju Smith-Schuster a couple times in the red zone. Noah Gray,
Rashi Rice had a lot of pop.
Rashee Rice had a lot. Like that's a Chief offense that is not one dimensional and needs to wait on a Travis Kelce guy who is definitely looks like past his prime. So if you're somebody who reached on it, and that's the same thing I was saying about Mark Andrews, is he looks like he's taking a step back and a little slow, and Isaiah Likely, who is a 24-year-old tight end, looks like he's taking a step up. He's big, he's strong, he can run a little bit. Hollywood Brown. What?
Getting a lot of targets downfield too. He's getting those big chances. Lamar's giving it to him.
Yeah, 100%. I was also as well. I think Zay Flowers has done a great job filling in that Hollywood Brown role in that Ravens offense as a deep threat. But they've also shown that he can be an underneath guy, a creativity, almost in a Debo kind of situation. At one point, Lamar going in late in that game only had like 1 yard was average depth of throw. So they were not looking. They were looking a lot of underneath, which means a lot of tight end, a lot of screens to receivers. Justice Hill had a monster day. I think great day if you're looking for a guy. If you're a Justice Hill owner, I think maybe Derrick Henry, as we talk about age, Derrick Henry has impact, but they're definitely not going to let him take all the carries. They're going to use him in situations he'll be successful in, and they obviously feel comfortable enough in Justice Hill to use him in the pass game, use that athleticism, and that seemed to be the strength of the offense, and not really chucking it deep as we saw when Lamar was forced to.
Yeah, and I mean he was running for his life out there at times. I mean they have a young offensive line in Baltimore this year, trying to build it up, and you could see some miscommunication there. They could not stand much of a chance against that Chiefs front.
What do you think for the Ravens season wise? Like obviously, I mean Lamar Jackson's a 2-time MVP candidate. He's you gotta assume he's gonna get better throwing the football. He looked great athletically. Like, are you still seeing the Ravens being a Super Bowl contender, or do you think they're gonna take a step back with looking like the Steelers are still trying to be competitive, the Bengals and the Browns are obviously still trying to be competitive?
Yeah, I mean I think the Ravens are always going to compete for the AFC North. I think it's going to be a 3-way race. But at the end of the day, I just don't see Lamar taking them all the way there. I think the AFC Championship is about all he's going to see. I can't see him pushing over the edge.
Well, I mean that defense kind of seemed to be like what that would get them there, and it seems like that defense is taking a step back, and I don't know if that offense has taken that jump up, but
Yeah,
like it
especially in the AFC, at a certain point, it just becomes battle of the QBs.
100%.
You
You
gotta
need the
go toe to
best.
toe with Mahomes.
I mean,
He's gonna put up numbers, and you're gonna have to come right back at him. And I
I
don't know
mean,
if he has that in him.
what Lamar was a toe away from I mean, he should have hit. I believe it was Rashad Bateman earlier. In that drive, but I mean, he was a toe away from being that
Sure.
competitive with the Chiefs. It's just
Listen,
like it's he.
ifs and buts were candies and nuts.
You're 100% correct. I just wonder, as tough as that team is and as many hits as Lamar is going to take, losing a game like they did week 1, I do think that could be effective for them later on in the year. I also think that, like, when I look at fantasy impact on a guy like Lamar, he's running a lot. He's throws. He's going to run in touchdowns. He is probably going to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback when you look at that production, as long as he stays healthy. I think if you look at Zay Flowers, if they're going to throw a lot of underneath stuff like they did and give him the opportunity to use that speed, he's looking like a wide receiver 2 possible production, top 25 receiver. And I think for where he was being drafted this season, that's a steal. Isaiah Likely, he looked like, granted it is week 1, he looks like going to be the tight end 1 of this team, and Mark Andrews is going to take a step back. Does that mean Isaiah Likely is going to be a top 5 tight end? I'm not going to say that coming out the gate, because I still think Mark Andrews is going to get his, and I think that offense is going to have one guy who goes on and off each week, but I do think he's going to take a bump up. I would be worried, though. for where Mark Andrews was drafted in redraft leagues, or if you have him in a dynasty league, are you going to get that same kind of production out of Mark Andrews that you have in the past? And it's right now, it's not. It's looking very similar to Travis Kelce, where he's got another guy on the other side. They have other weapons they could throw the ball to. Even Bateman had some catches late in that game. You know, they want to run the ball more. Derrick Henry got the ball. That is a team that has a couple guys that can raise it up, but I don't think there's a true number one on that offense for as far as fantasy relevant.
Yeah, and listen, if you went ahead and took Mandrews where you had to take him to get him, you should be shaking in your boots a little right now. But I think you should be careful not to overreact too, and not to go dump him off or sell him low. Rather, I think it's a good opportunity to go in and buy low on a guy who's still only 29, who has a ton of history in this offense. You know, it it is just week one. You know, we see a lot of wild things, and it's a long season. So I wouldn't be completely out on Mark Andrews just yet. Uh, I think we could very easily see him still come out and still be the one at the tight end position in this offense.
Speaking of week one and overreacting to week one, I think we should move on to tonight's game or today's game or yesterday's game or whatever you wanted to say it is. The Packers-Eagles game where Saquon Barkley looks like he's on pace to have an Austin Eckler type season from a few years ago where he looks like he's going to be the bell cow. It looks like he's going to have a chance to get touchdowns every week in an offense that outside of really running the ball too dominantly and Jalen Hurts really using the play action to kind of work in his advantage in key throwing situations, I think this looked like Saquon Barkley was the number one piece of that Eagles offense.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. I mean, beyond that, you had a little bit of Jalen Hurts running at the end. Obviously AJ Brown gets the big touchdown, but short of that, there's the big plays come from Saquon. I mean, you talk about all those touchdowns, and I think it's worth noting too that Jalen Hurts got less goal line carries. There's less tush push and more so giving it to Barkley now that they have a guy that they really trust back there.
I do think that'll even out as far as games go. I do think that they ran a real route on Saquon that's got him a touchdown that I thought was very interesting for Kellen Moore. They did a design play to him to get him open. I think the way they use Will Shipley was interesting and more gadget plays. I think that's a great sign because he really that gave a lot of time for Saquon to really. I mean, they used Kenneth Gainwell as well, which a lot of people also expected them to do. But outside of that, it really seemed like Saquon was going to get his 20 touches a game, which he wanted. He's going to be effective behind a really good offensive line. And he looks like the one in this high-powered offense that's likely with the way Jalen Hurts plays. I know he was a little sloppy early on with the center issue and everything like that, but he could be a top 5 QB potential. Barkley looks like he could be a number 1 RB potential, which is amazing coming out. A.J. Brown looks like he could be a wide receiver 1 like he's doing, a great offensive line. Even Devontae Smith looks like he could be a top 25. Goddard got his. This was a high-powered offense that was going up against what people say is a pretty decent Packer defense.
Yeah, and everybody kind of got theirs. Everybody had a little bite on the Eagles offense. Obviously, Saquon taking the big ones there. And I think if there's any guy to own, it is Saquon. He is the one, and he's the feature of this offense. That's very clear.
I would also say that Dallas Goedert in a tight end premium league is a really, because he gets a lot of underneath garbage. They like to dump it off to him. He would be. I also obviously AJ Brown, AJB, all day, 24/7. He's always open. They just got to find a way to get the ball, and he likes to let people know to find the ball. Less. Devontae Smith is going to have games where he gets his. There's going to be also games where he does not look to get his. But other than that, this Eagle offense, outside of the first quarter, losing Jason Kelce, really seemed to get back a flow, and Kellen Moore really seemed to call a really good game against the Pack, including that last drive where they were able to just hold the game out, ice it out, get to the 1 yard line, and then take the points and kick the field goal, which obviously led to the Packers, which basically, looks like they lost Jordan Love, which kind of makes this whole game they had irrelevant fantasy-wise for the future.
It really does, yeah. And yeah, you touched a little on Jordan Love there. It's funny, I was thinking the beginning of the game, he was reminding me a lot of early season last year, Jordan Love. where he has this horrid completion percentage sitting around 50% the whole game, but he racks up some yards eventually, and he finds his way to put the ball in the end zone and really save his fantasy day. At the end of the day, he comes out with almost 20 fantasy points, and so it looks good on paper. But you saw that knee pop in the close up, and it's just devastating, right? Not only for Wisconsin, but for all these fantasy managers. He comes out, has a top 5 season last year, and you pick him up ready to see that again, and it looks like he's done for good.
I mean, how do you think if you're Jalen Reed? Like, I mean, if you're a Jalen Reed fantasy owner, this guy was looking like he was Love's favorite Reed. He was the guy. He was the #1 receiver. Christian Watson, every opportunity seemed to fit. Wicks seemed to also fail him. It seemed like there was only Luke Musgraves had a couple penalties that I thought were offsides, like things like that. Like I was like, and it seemed like every time Jordan Love needed a big play, there was Reed. And now with Love, looking like I'm not going to sit there and say he's out for the year. It could be, a couple games maybe, or maybe, he doesn't even miss any time and just plays through a sprain. But that's got to definitely affect him going forward. And it's going to make me as a Reed owner a little hesitant to continue, especially if Malik Willis is playing. If Malik Willis is playing, I don't know what this kid is.
Yeah, I think you got to give that whole team a little down tier. Even Josh Jacobs.
100%. They're going to stack the box against Malik. You're going to have to get really creative. Maybe we see some Reed option, get him using his legs. He's apparently got a big arm, but until I see it, he just got on the team a few weeks ago.
Yeah, if it does come out that in fact Love is done for the year, I would have to imagine they're going to go out and trade for a guy, try to keep this thing afloat because I think Malik Willis showed you at the end of that game. He can't even get the ball out to give his guys a shot.
I mean, there are rumors that the Browns were trying to trade Jameis Winston and have DTR be the backup, and it looks
Yeah.
like DTR is still the backup in Cleveland. Would you, if Jameis was the starting quarterback for the Packers, if Jordan Love, let's say, is done for the year, or even like certain, would that raise anybody up, or you feel like that's just still the same?
Yeah, no. I mean, I can definitely get into Jameis Winston, certainly over Malik Willis, because Jameis is going to go out there and sling it. Jameis is
True,
not
he can spin
exactly,
it.
he has been fantasy friendly in the past. You saw what he did with Godwin all those years ago. And you've got weapons there. I think that offense could be semi-potent, but certainly not the elite aspect that you were hoping for.
You could
With
also,
um,
I'd also say for the way Jameis plays quarterback, that those slot receivers and a guy like Christian Watson are going to get a lot of opportunities, more than just normal, because the way Jameis usually plays, it's usually a lot of deep balls. It's usually a lot of slot receiver guys. So I would actually say I don't know if it would help Josh Jacobs though. That's what I was trying to think. Because name me a time where Jameis Winston had a running back have a big year for him while he was the QB.
sure.
It's
I do trust LaFleur there too. I think he's a big part of Love's success too, and I don't think that offense is going to go completely dormant if they get a guy like Jameis in there. I think he will find a way to generate some offense there. So
I
I don't think you're completely dead in the water there. And really, I think if you got some guys panicking on guys like Josh Jacobs or Jaden Reed, and you can get in there for the low, anticipating a Winston or somebody else coming in, that could be an opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I know a guy like producer Justin has a guy like Jalen Reed on a bench for him. So, if he wants to sell low on him because Jordan Love's out, I would love to add him in another league, onto my roster as a owner of him in a separate league.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah, I heard the producer J Rock left almost 70 points on his bench
Mm,
just tonight. Yeah.
he'll tell you it's just week one, and Isaiah Likely and Jalen Reed, they got big careers for him in that dynasty league.
Sure. Yeah, and he's always thinking long term as he sits in his mediocrity.
He's a very mid team in this that dynasty league. Let's talking of about some mid teams. Let's talk about the rest of the weekend and some teams that have changed a couple bit, changed some things, like the Seattle Seahawks. teams like the Steelers, teams like the Chargers, the Falcons. Are there any teams that caught your eye, James?
Yeah. I mean, certainly the Falcons are an exciting one, but I
You're
think
excited to see what they are?
yeah,
The
I think the
Seahawks?
Seahawks though are a little could be an underrated offense this year. You still got Geno at the helm, and you've got the big three receivers, DK, JSN, and of course Lockett.
I would not call
Big
those a
thing,
big three. I would definitely not call them a big three.
I would. But the
Uh,
big
uh,
thing really is getting Pete Carroll out of there and that run first mindset. I think they're gonna set Geno loose. I think they're gonna let him grip it and rip it to his big guy on the outside, DK. He's a big alpha. I think they're gonna feed him this year. I think you see the rise of JSN. Lockett's always a nice little companion, but I think he falls back to the 3 spot because I think we really see JSN put it on the table this year.
DK has a tough matchup week 1 against a terrific corner in Patrick Surtain II. I do think JSN is going to have to be a guy that they really do want to rely on. That Seahawk team, I do think, is going to still be run first with Ken Walker. They hired the Ravens defensive coordinator. That's that mindset. Like I was talking about, I thought the Ravens yesterday kind of took a step back defensively. It's a new defense, a new defensive coordinator. It's going to take time for that to click in. And I'm curious to see how that Seahawk defense is going to click in together, start out the gate. And I wonder what's the trickle down on that offense. That team loves Geno. That team believes in Geno. I think they got a really good underrated running back in K9. Charbonnet is going to be solid. I think they do got weapons. I'm curious to see how they handle that Bronco defense and how that Bronco team as well is also going to handle. I think that's an interesting game at 4:05.
It really is, yeah. Yeah. I mean, we get to see if the rise or fall of Bo Nix. I heard some saying that it was just a desperation pick by Sean Payton to keep his job. But Bo
Some of those people are you.
No, I don't believe it was me. I think I was defending the captain.
You the shortest
After
name in the
letting
league,
out
Bo
there.
Nix.
And I mean, listen, if Bo Nix can just go out there and do what Sean Payton needs him to do, he's got a couple of weapons there. I think we could see him wheel and deal. He showed it in the preseason that he could be ready here, and I think I trust in Sean Payton there.
What do you think of those Denver Bronco weapons with like Cortland Sutton, Franklin, Greg, Adam
Yeah,
Troutman?
you got SUNY Cortland there, of course Franklin. You got some young guys. I think we see a Javante rise this year. You still got some guys behind him, but second year removed from that gruesome injury. Speaking of injuries, I seem to deal with them at the beginning of every year. A couple of years ago, had to deal with that Javante injury.
You think Javante is the guy over a guy like McLaughlin or Estime?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
What about a guy like Marvin Mims?
Yeah, Marvin Mims. I don't know. I didn't really see it from him last year.
So what are we really talking about with this Bo Nix offense? They got a bunch of dudes. Like I don't see any like go-to weapons. I could see them taking a receiver at the top of this draft, but outside, I'm shocked Bo Nix is playing. I really am.
Yeah,
They
I mean,
don't.
I don't know. It could kind of go both ways. A lot of people like to say that it's great to sit at the beginning. Peyton Manning comes out, says a few days ago, just get him in there, let him figure it out. I think it's case by case. I think if you're going to be a good QB, you'll get it figured out either way. And I think in Sean Payton's hands, and you've got some guys there. I don't hate SUNY Cortland as a number one guy. He's got some sure hands. He's got that veteran savvy at this point. I think he could be nice for the young
I think
QB.
Cortland Sutton's a very underrated receiver. He could be a wide receiver too in fantasy. I think he's really the only guy in this offense I'd actually want. I think Javante's interesting. I think Javante, McLaughlin. I think they're all decent guys who are solid on the team, and that's really what they are. I mean, you
Yeah,
mentioned to keep on moving. You mentioned the Falcons.
I did.
Kirk Cousins
Yeah, the
on the
Falcons are just a ball of intrigue. The Falcons are. You got a lot of hype around Drake London this year. Being expected to be that wide receiver one. Come out and be a top 12 guy. Even though we haven't seen it from him quite yet, but you get really two quarterback upgrades. You get Captain Kirk coming in, but then you get a guy behind him that's going to press Captain Kirk. But I mean, you talk about all the weapons on this offense. I mean, whoever is at the helm, whether it be Kirk or if Kirk gives way to Michael Pennis Jr., I think they're going to see a lot of success. I mean, you got Bijan standing behind him, and of course Kyle Pitts if he ever decides to show up to a game. You got a rebuilt offensive line there. I mean, that is an
They've also talked about wanting to get Tyler Algier involved in the offense. You know, you got Drizzy Drake London. I don't know who's gonna play wide receiver 2. I think Bijan's gonna take some time outside at the receiving spot. Maybe get that's how Tyler Algier gets playing. I believe they still have the ripcord. So is that not true?
Oh, I know they brought in Darnell Mooney.
That's true. They did bring in Darnell Mooney. That is true.
Mooney.
So they have some decent guys. I think Kirk Cousins is going to have a really solid year. I don't know if you're going to expect what you got last year because this is a completely different offense. He doesn't have Kevin O'Connell calling plays. He obviously doesn't have a jet plane out there. Even he doesn't have an Addy. I think Drake London has the opportunity to be a wide receiver 1 for fantasy. I think the hope for me as a Drake London fan is he's at least a top 24 receiver. Kyle Pitts, he could be the best tight end in football as far as receiving. He could also be the biggest bust in the tight end position we've seen in a while. That's really I never have the opportunity to draft him because he's usually drafted too high for my liking, but I do see the potential there with him. With a defensive coach coming into play, I really am expecting a monster year from Bijan, although Kirk is going to be quarterback, and we know how he likes to sling it. So maybe Darnell Mooney's a nice little slept-on player someone could use. Drake London, I'm curious to see about the tight end, considering how T.J. Hawk was used with Kirk. Maybe that brought him in there. If Kirk is I would much prefer the offense with Kirk there and have Penix sit on the bench for the year. I think anyone hoping that Penix can start this season is not doing the best for that offense or Penix either.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I think Penix is ready to go right now. I mean, I think you can slot him right on in there, and he will go in and wheel and deal. I think there's a reason that the Falcons decided not to even play him in that final preseason game. I think it's to stop the controversy. I think it's to get the heat off of Kirk Cousins, right? Because if the fans see too much of this guy, they're going to want that number 8 pick in the game. And I know, Kirk gets the contract. Oh, he's got at least 2 years guaranteed, yada, yada. At the end of the day, you don't spend the 8th pick in the draft if you're not going to be willing to play this guy at any given moment. I mean, and for Kirk, heaven forbid if he misses even a game or two or a little stretch of games. Because if you put Michael Pennis in the game, if you put the Pennis in the game, you're not going to want to take it out. Once it's in there, you're not going to want to take it out. He's going to be wheeling and dealing. He's got a great pocket presence. He's deadly accurate with all these weapons. He's got an offensive line to sit behind. I cannot see it go wrong for the 24-year-old Michael Pennis Jr.
I do think he has obviously with these weapons, but I do wonder with his injury history if he'll be able to survive. He never really stood out to me at Indiana, although he made some plays. I watched him have a great Penn State game, although I would say he's down on the 2-point conversion. But I do think he's a talented guy, but he's always done best when he has a chance to sit back, relax, and not be that guy. I think if he sits back a year and then maybe they address the Kirk thing with a trade, or maybe they figure it out and then he starts next year as a 25-year-old with all those weapons. Because I think those weapons, guys like Kyle Pitts, Drake London, they cannot sit with a rookie quarter. They need to be present right now. They need to be golden right now. Bijan, where he was drafted, I think we could all agree, was not as effective as a fantasy player or a football player as they would like to have been last season. Same with Drake London. Same with Kyle Pitts. Their most effective draft pick they've had in that offense has been Tyler Algier. That's because he was a late round pick and rushed for 1,000 yards. They need those offensive players that they drafted high to start showing out, and a veteran like Kirk has a history of doing that. take that pressure off them. Then you insert the Pennis next year, and you get this thing rolling with that pocket presence.
Sure, but frankly, their quarterback last year is not currently employed by a team,
Yes,
right?
he's working for DoorDash.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So I mean, I think he was holding these weapons back tremendously. I mean, there's a reason that Drake London was what a low end wide receiver too in total last year, and he's getting projected up to be a wide receiver one because
Yes,
we
they're expecting that jump from Kirk, though.
sure, yeah, because we're expecting that efficiency. But frankly, I'm willing to project that because out onto the Pennis because frankly the injuries are the only question with the Pennis, and he's not the one coming off an Achilles tear. At in over 30 years of age. I think that is being a little overlooked. That that's something that could flare up for Captain Kirk. It didn't exactly happen early in the season either. So
True.
it's to keep an eye on. But for Kirk, better sit back there. Don't take any big hits. Don't come out of the game because the fans aren't going to want him to take it out. Uh, He's going to have a ton of pressure on him if they let the Pennis in the game.
Speaking of teams with a ton of pressure, these Cincinnati Bengals who are going to go play these Pats, coming into this week, T. Higgins looking doubtful coming into this weekend. Jamar, questions about him. I picked them in a survivor pool. Are you nervous about this Bengal team going far with Joe Burrow and what they have coming into this weekend? I mean, they're playing the Patriots.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think either way, they are going to get it done against the Pats. Though, if we get a chance to touch on the Pats, I think that's a team that could be the Houston
Well,
of
all right,
this year.
talk about the Pats then. Tell me.
Yeah,
Tell me.
I think that's where the intrigue lies, frankly. I mean, they get a guy like Jalen Polk to go along with their Drake May selection. I think Drake May is going to come out and surprise a lot of people. And people are looking at that situation like it's really bad because Patriots have kind of had a bad name since Brady left. And I think people are still associating with that logo, that bad aura. But it's a new regime in there. I think Drake May is gonna walk in and light it up.
You think that because of Polk? Or like you think because I mean, Drake May has a tough situation. He's got a defensive coach coming into the situation. Like
Sure.
the offense has not. They don't have a lot of weapons. That line's not really great. We're really just talking about Ramondre Stevenson and Polk and Douglas. Like
Yeah,
that
listen,
team is.
and listen, it's all relative, really, right? Like if you're walking into this terrible situation, I'm not saying the Patriots are making the playoffs this year, but I think he's going to walk out and show people why he was the number 3 pick in the draft, and he's
I
he's going to
mean,
elevate this team, and I think we already saw it a little bit in the preseason.
he's not even starting week 1.
May was named the starter.
I think Jacoby's the starter.
I don't think so. I think they named May the starter.
9 days ago, Jacoby Brissett officially named starter week 1.
Oh, fair enough. All right, then he's sitting.
He's sitting, and we were just talking about Michael Penix. So you think that's a
Yeah.
mistake, obviously, to sit him. They obviously don't see enough in him and I didn't see enough in Drake May either. I also think that's a terrible situation. No weapons, a lot of young weapons at best. Hunter Henry's probably the go-to guy outside of Ramondre Stevenson and the rookies. Have Jacoby Brissett try not to die. Basically, that's the goal. I think that Patriot team they could be one of the worst teams right now going. That's why I wouldn't be worried no matter who the Bengals play. I think this could be a good Zach Moss week or Chase Brown. I think Jamar is going to play no matter what. I think he's going to be pretty effective. That would be the Patriots. The fact you'd even say, hey, that's a team that has a lot of potential. I mean, they guess they do have the defensive head coach. That defense
I
has
do.
got to take a
I
step
think
up.
by
Matthew
the end of this year,
Judon.
they're gonna have a much different outlook.
You don't think the Matthew Judon thing was weird?
Sure. Well, where did Judon go?
The Falcons.
Oh, he went to the Falcons. Okay. Yeah, I'm not privy to the situation.
So I just think the whole situation I think that's a teller of what's going on. I mean, You would mention a team like the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans play the Colts this week, and a lot of people think that's going to be a good game. I think the Texans are much better than the Colts, but I'm also not an AR guy. You're an AR guy. This going to be the shootout everyone's hoping it to be?
Yeah, yeah, I definitely do. You got two young hung QBs. You know CJ is going to be out there slinging it. You know AR is going to be running all over the place. You know at least 10 rushing attempts in both of the full games that he played. I mean, talk about the injury reliance with AR. I mean, a guy that injuries are the only thing you're worried about there from a fantasy football perspective. Right, you know, as long as this guy is on the field, he's going to be running all over the place. At least 10 rushing attempts per game. You know, even in the game he got hurt in, he was going on his second rushing touchdown. And so you know this guy is going to throw up points as long as he's in the game.
I do wonder what this does to guys like Michael Pittman, Downs, Pierce, JT, because I thought they had really good end of the seasons with Gardner Minshew, and now they have a more mobile quarterback, less accurate. He does have a big arm, but he's gonna take less of those chances. So I'm curious. I've heard a lot of good things about Alec Pierce and AR together. They have good chemistry. I don't know outside of. I mean, JT is JT. He's usually drafted higher than I would take him. But I guess AR would really be the. He's kind of in that Lamar Jackson situation. He could he could score you a ton of points, but really the weapons around him, really that high end guys you're going to be looking for.
Yeah, yeah, you know, he's kind of going to cap those receivers, especially because they do have a handful of weapons over there. I mean, I think JT could have a great year. You know, that read option with those two in the backfield is going to be dominant. You know, it kind of reminds you of Lamar and Derrick Henry back there, having two weapons like that next to each other in the backfield. But yeah, I mean, you look at guys like Lamar and their passing yardage always seems to be capped, always have more rushing touchdowns on teams like that. And so I think you have to temper your expectations for that receiving core.
I would agree. I would agree with that, which is the total opposite for CJ Stroud on the other side, who, he's got Stephon Diggs now, Nico, he's got Dalton Schultz, Tank Dell. They added Joe Mixon. That line is still going to be really, really good. That they just seem loaded at so many possessions. CJ is just going to spin it out there and kind of that team. They have the potential to be the best scoring offense in the league. And if you have a guy on that team who can get points along with it, it's not a bad guy to have.
Absolutely, yeah. You want a piece of offenses like that, and
Do you think
that,
do you think Stephon Diggs stays the dog that people expect him to, or do you think he takes a step back? Because I think he takes a step back. I think Nico's the guy there. I wonder if Stephon and then Tank Dell are now gonna, battle that out.
yeah, I mean, I think you have to assume that he takes a slight step back, you know, going from being the clear number one guy with Josh Allen to, you know, the maybe one B. I think really at best is what you're hoping for is that he can sort of share that role with Nico. But I mean, you've got other guys there too, and you know, you got Schultz, the tight end. I mean, there are a lot of mouths to feed over there, and so, but you know, I think you can expect a solid wide receiver two season out of him.
Now, we talked about the Falcons before, but the Falcons this week, they play the Steelers, your Pittsburgh Steelers. There are rumors that your guy, Mr. Dangerous Russell Wilson, is dealing with a calf injury and might not play quarterback, and that it might be Justin Fields' team for this week. Does that change your perspective on this Steeler week? Does that change your perspective on that defense or anything about that game?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely. I think that that offense has a much different outlook. You know, I think
Positive, negative?
yeah, I think for Justin Fields, I think if you have him, it's a super flex league. I think you have to consider starting him, depending on what your QB situation is like, because you know he's going to be running all over the place. That's really all he can do, right? And he is great at that, and he can put points on the board. But I think you know if you're holding guys like Najee, like Jalen, those two running backs, I think you got to put a cap on them. You know, for Jalen, he's not going to dump it off quite as much as a guy like Russ. And for Najee, he's going to steal some goal line carries. He's going to steal rushing yards in general on those rushing downs. So I think those guys take a nick. Frankly, I think you got to give Pickens and the receiving core a nick as well, given the you know the likely cap on
I
the
like
passing.
Muth. I think Muth is the guy who's going to rise up. I would agree with you on the receivers and the backs. I think Muth should rise though because of what I saw with Fields and Cole Kmet. I think that he has definitely comfortable throwing the tight end, not really the receiver. He also hasn't had a lot of really good receivers to work with. I mean, we're talking Darnell Mooney is his number one receiver, and before we were talking the team on the other end, the Falcons, he's like the third or fourth option, and he was kind of the best option, Fields really had for most of his career with the Bears.
Yeah, so maybe that's all he needs is a little Tomlin and a couple weapons. They've built up while still young. That offensive line is coming around for the Steelers. Uh, while it's not going to be phenomenal, it should be the best they've had in almost a decade, really, since the Pouncey days. We're not quite there, but it's definitely better than what they had in the twilight days of Ben's career, and even the short Kenny Pickett era. That poor guy, but yeah, I think he's up for that offense.
Poor guy is you who took him over Bijan in a fan of Dynasty League draft.
Over Brees. But
Oh,
yeah,
that's right. You're
I
right. You're
think
right. You're
that's
right.
a good way. I think that's a good way to put a cap on
No, no,
this.
no, no. Hold on. We got one more. We have our little rapid fire for the before the season, before we say goodbye to the people. Our little rapid fire questions for the game of the week. Where are you putting Maserati Marv this season there, James? Wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 potential. Where are you thinking here?
Yeah, I think there could be some questions about the first few weeks of the season. It always is kind of wonky. Everybody's getting used to it. He's never played in this league. I think you still have to give some time for that adjustment, but with a guy like him, I think you make some exceptions. I think he does sneak his way into the wide receiver one conversation on most weeks. You look at a guy like Kyler, who we've seen him support, elite receivers like DeAndre Hopkins. Um, you know, you got Trey McBride there. You've got some other bums, but it's really just gonna be Maserati Marv and Kyler there. I think they connect early and often, and I think he's gonna be a target hog in that offense.
I like Trey McBride in that offense, and obviously it's Maserati Marv. I think those are really the two guys I'd want in this offense. James Conner puts up points. Trey Benson's a guy, but I think them and K1 are going to have a phenomenal season. Buffalo's offense, where do they take a step back this year? Or they let James Cook and Dalton Kincaid and Keon Coleman have a time?
Yeah, it's tough for Buffalo. I think they're really going to start to feel that contract of Josh Allen. Obviously Diggs is a bit of a diva, and so maybe that played into it. But certainly, getting that contract off and taking up such a large percentage, Josh is going to have to do more and more of it himself. But I think he continues to do that. But I don't know how strong the outlook is for that offense.
I really like Dalton Schultz and Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Schultz. I really like Dalton Kincaid in that offense. Not really sure about the receivers. I mean, Shakir's okay. I love James Cook. I've loved him for years. If he gets that opportunity, he can average 5 yards a carry. But that's obviously Josh Allen's team. He's a guy who is kind of in that Lamar area where he's got to carry the team and just kind of put up a lot of fantasy points. And that's going to be how that is. Mr. Caleb Williams, how was his season?
Yeah, I mean, Caleb is another rookie. I mean, with this class, that especially with those two, I think you can make exceptions and really project these guys higher than you really would a rookie. I think you can compare it to sort of CJ's season as the sort of cap on a rookie QB season. I don't think we should expect close to 5,000 yards or 40 touchdowns, but build around him with how Chicago has really set him up for success. I think you can expect back end QB1, high end QB2 this year.
I would kind of agree that maybe expectations for him are a little high, but I do think he could be a 30 touchdown guy with all the weapons he has. And I think DeAndre Swift could be a monster in that backfield as well for them. Trevor Lawrence, your guy, Barbie. Brian Thomas as his wide receiver 1, Evan Ingram, stud tight end. Your opinions about that offense coming into the year?
Yeah. I mean, for Trevor, we thought after that big playoff game, he'd come back and he'd be this elite guy. Finishes QB 13, a little disappointing last year. For me, I'll believe it when I see it with him. I'm kind of slotting him in as high end QB2. Maybe he can sneak into the QB1 conversation, but As far as him being elite, or if Brian Thomas is gonna unlock him, I think that story's yet to be told, and I'll believe it when I see it.
I love BT. I love Travis Etienne this year. I also love Evan Ingram as just a receiving monster. I think Trevor Lawrence is he's a solid mid-tier quarterback. I think they paid him a lot of money. I think him and Tua are pretty comparable. They have a good deal of weapons around them where they can both be in a super flex league. They're both needed quarterbacks to have, and I think that's fine fantasy relevance. I think BT could end up taking this league by storm if he wants to, if he gets the opportunity. Speaking of guys who take this league by storm, the Detroit Lions, Sam Laporta, Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Is this the year Jahmyr Gibbs puts David Montgomery in behind him?
Yeah, I mean, I think we sort of saw him do it in the back half of that rookie season. I think what surprised everybody is that he's still getting goal line carries.
Mm.
That they weren't giving him the DeAndre Swift treatment where he'd get down to the 2 yard line and then they'd hand it off.
Well, he's a little
Um,
bigger.
yeah, he is slightly bigger, sure, but is Swift is bigger than Gibbs? No, I think he's sort
No,
of
ain't Gibbs taller?
he might be a little taller, but he's like 200 pounds. I mean, that would
Yeah, but
probably
that downward running for that height, like
sure.
that's
I mean, look,
pretty
he makes it
versatile.
work. He is definitely the exception at that weight, and like I had huge concerns coming out for him with that weight, but once you saw
I
the draft capital, I mean,
thought
it
you were
just
thought you were crazy for that.
locked it in. Yes,
I mean,
you did.
I told you I thought he was better than Bijan coming out the gate, and I think that coming out for a fantasy relevant player, I think I was right.
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think we could very well be looking at prime Alvin Kamara
I
coming up.
I
I
did
think
tell
that's
you that was
really,
my
really
comp for
who
him.
he could be.
I do think that if
I
used
mean,
correctly, I do think though Alvin didn't have to deal with guys like Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown or a David Montgomery in the lineup, or even a guy like JMO, who could take it over the top.
yeah,
I think that's if Jared Goff can get him the ball. I think they have a ton of weapons there, and that's one of the issues I always find with like those super stud guys. If they kind of like AJ Brown or like Saquon, but there's a lot of mouths to feed. Like that's going to be one of those kind of offenses. It's going to come down to Jared Goff to distribute the ball, and he's unlike Jalen Hurts that mobile. He's probably going to be a solid super flex quarterback if with all those weapons.
yeah, absolutely. I think Jared Goff. I mean, this could be the best offense in the league this year, with all those weapons and that offensive line. I mean, I think they have one of the highest point totals, maybe the highest for this week. And I think that's going to be a killer of a game. I think everybody's going to eat.
I mean, it's funny because I also think the Rams could they're playing them this week, and they could be like that surprise offense because I mean, they have Matt Stafford at quarterback, but they got two backs who are very similar and decently athletic, and I think Cooper Kupp's going to come back to his form with Puka Nacua. That's an offense with a ton of weapons and a ton of talent around it. Matt Stafford could be a QB1.
He absolutely could be. Yeah, as old of a man as he is, and as tied together as that shoulder is, he absolutely could be.
Matt
You've got
Stafford says he wants to play 4 more years, sir.
he can say whatever he likes. That is his right. But I'm not sure quite how long that shoulder hangs on.
That's fair. He does. He is a little. He gets banged up, and I think he'll go as long as. I think Cooper Kupp will go as long as he goes, which is kind of doesn't put them in a dynasty situation. It puts them more in a right now redraft
But you
situation.
know what? They haven't exactly fallen into the poverty that I think everybody expected
That's
after they
true.
burned up all those picks. They've done such a phenomenal job
That
drafting and keeping guys
100%.
above
The
average.
fuck them pick strategy seems to have worked. It seems to have worked very, very well. Now, speaking of old men at quarterback, the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers coming off an Achilles situation. Where is your expectations for the Jets this year? G. Willie and Brees.
Yeah, I mean, listen, for me, I mean, you're looking at the longest playoff drought in all of sports for the New York Jets. I pity the Jets, and so I'll do
You
root for
should.
them. I'll clap for them. I do like to see them win. Aaron Rodgers. You got on paper this incredible roster. I mean, you should be very good. You should get in the playoffs, and you should go far in the playoffs. But until the Jets show me that they are not the Jets, I'm still gonna believe that they're the same old Jets. I mean, they've done a lot of same old Jets stuff this year. Of course, the head coach getting cucked by Aaron Rodgers. He goes off to Brazil or wherever the hell he went instead of showing up to training camp. Um, do I think Rodgers is going to be good? I think Rodgers will go out and be Rodgers, but I just I, I I can't believe it until I see it with the Jets. I'll be very happy when I do see it, but I'm tempering expectations until then.
I would agree with that, but I'm also a Jet fan, so I could see. But I think if Aaron is healthy and he has a good run game, I think Brees is Brees, top 5 back. I think with a healthy Aaron, G. Willie is a top 15 wide receiver, maybe even 10 to 9, like maybe 11, right in that area. All right, so for the final question, the 49ers, what are your feelings on CMC this season?
Yeah, CMC, of course you do hold him in our home dynasty league. I'm thinking about sending out some feelers, but there's always that fear with CMC. He's gone a few years here, a couple RB1 seasons, and it just feels like it's coming. Like it feels like it's coming, doesn't it? It feels like it's due, that big injury.
Oh, I don't know if he's gonna get
And
that big injury. I mean, I think he works really, really hard on keeping his body. He gets a lot of nicks, he gets a lot of things, but that's usually how that goes. Some guys get the big injury, some guys get a lot of nicks and a lot of bangs up, but they don't get the big injury. And I think he's talked about in videos, talking about how his dad was training him in high school. This is what you do to keep your body healthy. This is what you do to deal with the nicks and bumps and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if that big injury is coming. Will he miss a couple games here and there this season? I think that's only a matter of time for a back. I think there's some decent backs on that roster like Mason and Isaac who could take some carries. But I still think if you're talking that CMC is not going to be the number 1 back, maybe he's top 3. Like I really don't think we're talking like a fall
absolutely,
off.
if he's on the field, yeah, you have to project him as the number 1 guy. I mean, there was a point where they were just trying to feed him touchdowns. Remember when he had that touchdown streak, at least 1 touchdown in every game, and they kept trying to get him that touchdown. You know,
Well,
it,
they're a team that loves them. They block with George Kittle's one of their better players. He blocks really hard. Brandon Ayuk, who they just paid, blocks really hard. Debo blocks really hard. They like to run the ball. Everyone's committed to running the ball. I mean,
absolutely.
if I had Brock Purdy, I'd also be very committed to running the ball as well. So
Yeah, and
that's
that should be an interesting situation, seeing if they do decide to pay him.
or if they want to get themselves some Kirk Cousins in the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, Kirk probably is gonna get replaced by the Pennis at some point, or I mean, I can't see them making him sit for 2 years, taking him 8th overall, and so I think you very well could see Shanahan's wish, his old pipe dream come true and bringing in Kirk.
I mean, he's waited for a very long time, and they're going to have to pay Brock at some point. I mean, Dak's also going to have to get paid too. A lot of quarterbacks are going to have to
Yeah,
get paid, but that's a conversation for another day. This has been a splendid time talking with you, James, here on Content Fantasy. We'll talk to you guys some point next week about the garbage and week 2. The rest of week 1. James, how you feeling going in?
feeling fantastic. Very excited for this first Sunday flip red zone on, and yeah, just ready to get it going here. Very exciting stuff. Good talking with you too, bud.
Well, that's us here. Us. See, now we're in. Now I'm done. Like that's it here for Content Fantasy. Sponsored by Front Yard Trampoline Productions. Don't forget to like and subscribe everywhere on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Pornhub, OnlyFans. Anyway, you got anything else?
That's all I got. For today.
Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Music, LimeWire.
Sure. All those things.
Yeah. We're supposed to have the producer guy play some music at some point, but he's
This is Front Yard Trampoline for you.
this is FYT Productions.
Wow. Just asleep at the wheel. Literally asleep. Unbelievable.
Well, Arrivederci.
Later, skater.